Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Saturday, November 5th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Northwestern game is today. The game against Michigan, 3 weeks away, Kevin Noon, 21 days. I'm not comfortable with the football season being this close to being done, but that's all right. We have a football game we get to talk about and we get to see in person today. It is Ohio State visiting Northwestern. We can talk about the actual footballing in a minute, but we got to talk a little bit about the weather because it seems like it's going to be kind of a crazy day.
Yeah, a weather event was scheduled and a football game broke out. It's going to be windy, and depending on which weather app you look at, it could be a little rainy. I mean, I guess it just really kind of matters what Mother Nature wants to do, but wind is going to be the big topic there. Whether or not the winds are sustained in the mid 20s and gust up into the 50s, it's going to have an impact on this one.
Yeah, just to give you the latest weather report, there is a gale warning for Saturday in Evanston. I'm not kidding, a gale warning. Southwest gales from to 45 knots with a few storm force gusts to 50 knots. So the good news is this game is not being played out on Lake Michigan because if it was, significant waves to 9 feet and occasional waves to 12 feet expected. It's an Edmund Fitzgerald day on the Great Lakes. Fortunately, we are not out on the Great Lakes. We are in the in the friendly confines of Ryan Field.
Will this be a 3-hour tour?
It's
3.5-hour tour.
I was going to say it's going to be an ABC game. I think so. Yeah, it's probably 3.5 to 3:45. But yeah, how do you see? I mean, we had been worried about rain all week, and it sounds like rain is maybe going to be a little bit in the early part of the game, maybe if anything. But the wind is going to be probably blowing from on the right side of your TV screen, the bottom right-hand corner of your TV screen, towards the top left corner of your TV screen. It's not going to just be clearly one direction or the other. You got a little crosswind going on there. How much does that, with that much wind, impact a football game?
I mean, it absolutely impacts a football game. I don't care how strong your arm is. We're talking about significant wind. I mean, just the wind, and then you throw in the gusts. And on the huddle over at Buckeye Huddle, a lot of people say, well, it doesn't matter. C.J. Stroud has a strong arm. Well, there's having a strong arm, and then there's having, dealing with this type of wind. So it'll be interesting as Ohio State tries to refine itself in terms of the run game and maybe trying to find themselves in terms of who's going to be running the ball this week. But it should be interesting. It may speed up that 3-hour and 45-minute tour to a little quicker if this is a run and done game.
Yeah, it does feel like it is going to be probably a little bit more of a run-heavy game, which Northwestern has not been great at running the football, but Northwestern hasn't been great at passing the football, so I'm not sure how much it really hurts Northwestern. Ohio State has been living with its passing game the last few weeks. This puts a little more pressure on that run game, and you wonder, this is probably a little bit better of a test than we were maybe anticipating, because this is not a great Northwestern defense either, but if you're very limited in what you can do in the passing game and you have to kind of lean on the running game, that puts a lot more pressure on the running game, and then there's, of course, the question of, so who's going to be running the ball for Ohio State today? Because Travion Henderson has been a little nicked up. Mayan Williams missed the second half of last week's game, actually the last 3 quarters of last week's game at Penn State with a hand injury, and he's been dealing with the knee thing as well. And then you've got Dallin Hayden, you've got Chip Trainum. I mean, who's running the ball for Ohio State today?
Yeah, I would expect to see a healthy dose of Dallin Hayden and Chip Trainum, and I think that in some ways Chip Trainum is in better position. Just as somebody who's carried the mail on the collegiate level a little bit more, ball security is going to be very important in this game. Northwestern is probably knowing what Ohio State's going to do, probably trying to put everybody on the team in the box and try and rip the ball away. And if you want to sit there and figure out how to have a great equalizer in terms of a 38-point line or whatever it ends up being when this game opens, have a couple turnovers and see what happens there. But as for what this means for the passing game, I'm sure there are some analysts out there already saying that this is going to kill C.J. Stroud's Heisman chances because Hendon Hooker, he once threw a ball over the mountains in a cyclone or something like that, and it's all over at this point. But Ohio State is going to have to get a little creative in terms of the running game. I don't think that we're going to see them try to reinvent the wheel. Northwestern is incapable of doing pretty much anything football related this year. But with that being said, how many times has Northwestern really been able to dedicate all 11 guys inside the box? So Ohio State's going to have to figure some things out. But this is the kind of test they're going to need to get guys like Matt Jones and Donovan Jackson and Luke Whippler in the interior line ready.
It will be interesting to see how, you don't just have to run the ball between tackles. If Ohio State is going to be run heavy today, I would expect a significant dose of some of that sideline to sideline, some of that east-west stuff that we've seen with little pop passes to Emeka Ibuka, little short swing passes out, little get in the screen game, get the ball outside real quick, try and make someone miss a tackle. If you get everyone blocked up, maybe that turns into a big play. We saw that not work very well for Ohio State last week at Penn State, but they really didn't do a lot of the jet motion stuff to Emeka Ibuka. I'm expecting potentially, a heavier dose of that. And probably you're probably going to be limited somewhat in your downfield passing with as much wind as there's going to be. I think you're probably going to see a lot of that sideline to sideline stuff, and then you take your chances as you see opportunities.
Exactly, and I'm really interested in seeing what happens in the kick and punt return game as well too. With the win there, and Ohio State has not necessarily been the most dynamic team in either of those categories, but fortunately for Ohio State, Northwestern is not nearly as talented in terms of the defense as Penn State was. The best product that Northwestern had transferred to Notre Dame with Brandon Joseph, actually the player who was involved in the hit that knocked Jackson Smith-Njigba out for a significant part of the season and counting. But yeah, I think they're going to have to do a lot of things to try and attack the edges, because Northwestern is going to do everything it can to try and block things up between the tackles. I mean, is it going to matter? I think that was earlier in the season, Ohio State, I'd say no. They were pretty much able to do whatever they wanted. The last two games, running for a little less than 120 against Penn State, definitely running for under 100 against Iowa. They need to taste a little success, and I think this is going to be a game where they're going to taste some success, and then carry that into Indiana, then Maryland, and then see where everything may land in the finale of the regular season.
Well, you mentioned Jackson Smith-Njigba there, so let's talk a little bit about him. We were at practice on Wednesday as the team was coming off the field. He was not carrying a helmet, not in pads. I would certainly not expect to see him on Saturday. As for pretty much everyone else, Mayan Williams could play. Ryan Day kind of indicated that was a possibility. Travion Henderson is probably going to play. We'll see how many carries he gets. But, they've kind of had a bunch of guys banged up. We'll see about Cam Brown. We're going to find out about all those other guys officially on Saturday morning, 9 a.m. We'll have that availability report. We'll have that on our Buckeye Huddle pregame show at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle right at 9 a.m. Eastern on Saturday morning, so we can all find out together who is going to be available and who is not for Ohio State. On the other side of the ball, Northwestern is one of the worst teams in the country. They're 108th in S&P plus, or SP plus on offense. They're actually 131st on special teams. I have not seen that discussed a lot, but Northwestern special teams have not been very good this year. And with a windy day, that might get worse. If you don't have a reliable punter, you don't have a reliable field goal kicker, that's probably not going to help the Northwestern effort. But, Northwestern has not really been able to run the ball. They haven't been able to really throw the ball all that well. This seems like a day where, if Northwestern is made one-dimensional by the weather or by the Ohio State defense, either one, this seems like this could be a long day for Northwestern when they have the ball.
Yeah, I think Northwestern is going to probably be zero-dimensional in this game, because they had to make a change at quarterback. Ryan Helinski wasn't getting it done. They bring in a redshirt freshman who's a little bit more accurate. He's throwing in the 70% range, but he's not finding much success. Sure, pick up those yards between the 20s, but he hasn't been able to lead them much in terms of scoring. The running game has been unremarkable. Evan Hull is really the main weapon in this offense for the Wildcats. You have to keep an eye on him as a pass catcher as well, but beyond that, there's just a whole lot of nothing right now. And then you have the left tackle, Peter Skoronski, who is definitely an NFL caliber type of player. Kind of feel bad for the guy, because he is surrounded by a line that is young and in disrepair and just not very good. So Ohio State should be able to tee off and really limit what Northwestern is capable of doing. And really one of Ohio State's quote-unquote weakest spots in terms of defensively is dealing with 50-50 balls. I don't think we're going to see a lot of 50-50 balls being thrown up and back shoulder fades and things of that nature as Dorothy and Toto are flying through the air in Evanston.
Yeah, it does feel like you're going to see, this feels like this could be a big game for the Ohio State defensive line on the whole. It was a very big game for JT Tuimoloau last weekend again at Penn State, but you had a good day for Zach Harrison. You had Tyleik Williams making some big plays. This feels like this could be a dominant day potentially for the Ohio State defensive line on the whole. And, if you do get a JT Tuimoloau versus Peter Skronsky matchup, that's going to be one of those really fun one-on-one matchups to keep an eye on where, that turns into NFL draft tape for good or bad for both of those guys at some point in the next couple of years. So that'll be a fun one to watch. Is there anything to you that, suggests that this could be a game in the fourth quarter? If this is a 10-point to, 14-point game in the fourth quarter, what does it take for this to be, not that Ohio State's in danger, just that Ohio State is not anywhere close to putting the backups in the fourth quarter? What would it take for that to happen today?
The wind to blow over several Ohio State benches and trap players underneath the benches, and Ohio State to only have 9 guys out on the field. I don't see a scenario where this is a 10 to 14 point game. I mean, of course, you can say -5 in the turnover margin, having to go to players that are not seeing any playing time for this reason, that reason, or another reason. The only way that this game would be 14 points is if it was 14-0, in my opinion. And I don't like being that guy to just summarily dismiss an opponent, but Northwestern is summarily dismissible, and that's just kind of where we stand right now. And I'm sorry if I didn't give a great answer to the question, but that's just honestly how I feel. I don't think that there's much of a scenario outside of an act of God that is going to have Northwestern within hailing distance by the time we get into the fourth.
Yeah, no hail in the forecast, so that's good news. Northwestern has yet to win on American soil this year, which is wild to say, but they won the season opener in Ireland against Nebraska, have not won a game since. Probably not going to win today, but we will all find out together. Ryan Field, noon Eastern. We will have complete pregame coverage on youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle starting at 9 a.m. with that availability report, so make sure you check that out. And, of course, as soon as that clock hits 0, we'll have our full Buckeye Huddle postgame report live from Evanston with player interviews, coach interviews, all that good stuff, plus the Buckeye Weekly Instant Reaction podcast as well. So that is all at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.